Hello, and welcome back to The Journey We Take. A couple episodes ago, I shared some of the poems that I have written that were included in the Journey We Take poetry book, a collection of some of my prose and poetry that I pieced together a few years ago for you guys to have in your hands. And that episode was taking some of those pieces of work and diving in deeper into the meaning that lives behind the words. And I was really moved by the way many of you guys seem to connect with those pieces of work that I've created, and just even if it offered your own interpretations, I thought that was really awesome. And it's my favorite thing about poetry. It's never just one particular thing, it is like an alive piece of art that shifts depending on who's reading it or who's listening. So today I wanted to dedicate this episode to continuing to open up more of that writing to you. So I'll be sharing some of my poems that we didn't do last time again in this episode and what inspired them, and just leaving you guys some room to reflect on what they may bring up in your own story. So I am going to start this episode with a piece called Out of the Box. Whenever I wrote this poem, firstly, I was thinking about the subtle ways that we're taught to conform. Sometimes family, sometimes it's society, sometimes it's even that little voice in our own head that whispers to shrink down and be smaller, and just to be easier to digest for others. I open with a line that says, heading for an identification assassination. And that's my way of trying to say that when we force ourselves into these boxes that don't fit, we actually start killing off parts of who we really are. And it's leading that will lead to the erosion of our identity. And for me, I was just thinking that that was absolutely terrifying, to just completely lose yourself, and just to allow it to be acceptable is just, not staying true to yourself. So that could not be my reality. And that inspired those words, and just the metaphor of reshaping the box instead of becoming a contortionist, as I will speak in this poem, came from me just realizing that the problem isn't me, it's the box, the standards, the idea that we all need to fit a certain mold. Like, why should I twist myself into pain whenever I could just expand the space to fit my own truth? So that shift in perspective is super freeing, but sometimes it could be really hard to embody in the real world, in real life, because even whenever you know the box isn't yours, stepping outside, going into the real world, it comes with risk, judgment, rejection, people misunderstanding you. All that can be really scary, because even whenever you know the box is the problem, it's like, okay, cool, I don't fit, but what now? Like, who am I without these expectations? But that is exactly where the real work begins. So I end it with saying to render my freedom and explore a new territory. And that part is just the release, the freedom part, that moment of reclaiming yourself, and that courage to move beyond the walls and into the unknown. So whenever I think about it now, I realize that this poem isn't just about me. It's just supposed to connect with anyone who has ever felt the weight of being forced into a certain role and identity, or any kind of expectation that is suffocating them. So maybe you felt that in school, where you had to choose paths that didn't really reflect your heart. Maybe in family, where you have felt the need to carry expectations of who you should be. Or maybe, again, like in your own mind, where just that fear and self-doubt start to build these walls around you. But what I've learned is that the box is never worth your soul. So if you feel like you're folding, bending, erasing yourself to just fit, that is, in my opinion, the signal to reshape this box I speak of, to step out, even if it means walking into a territory that is uncertain. So if you feel confined, break free. So let me go ahead and read the poem. Maybe that's what I should have done first, but here we are, living and learning together, right? So this is Out of the Box. Heading for an identification assassination if I never break out of the box, restricting my progression. I'd rather reshape it into new dimensions before becoming a contortionist for the unreasonable sake of fitting expectations. My fate is not sealed within the confinement of conformity. I will detach from all impediments to render my freedom from a place so desolate and explore new territory. So, again, one of the most powerful things about poetry, that something that it's taught me, is that words can basically give shape to the battles that we don't always know how to name. And just writing these things out for me personally has become my way of reclaiming space in a world that tries to shrink us down. So I hope that can inspire some of you guys to seek that yourself. Next is picking fruit. When I wrote this one, I was basically thinking how easy it is to want everything or certain things to happen now. And especially because we live in a culture that thrives on immediacy, instant answers, instant success, instant gratification, especially. But growth, healing, love, dreams, all of that, they don't work like that. They can be forced, or they cannot be forced, excuse me. That's the whole point. They cannot be forced. But it's so easy to crave those kind of things before their time. So whether it's relationships, success, whatever you may name, I think most of us know that pull, that desperation to taste that sweetness of that certain thing right now. So let me go ahead and read you guys the poem. Picking fruit. The fruit does not ripen abruptly. Dispel your desperation, or the bite will taste of bitterness from lack of maturation and unwillingness to await the sweetness, cravings left unsatisfied from an absence of patience. The fruit here represents those things that we long for, and the warning in the poem is that if we rush that process, if we bite too soon, all we will taste is bitterness. And that bitterness is not the fruit's fault. It's ours because it's due to our unwillingness to wait. And I have experienced this times in my own life where there's been moments where I thought I was ready, where I pushed ahead out of desperation only to find myself frustrated or let down. But looking back, I see that it wasn't that the fruit wasn't good, it just wasn't ripe yet. And sometimes I was the person that was not ready to receive it. So I have learned that patience is not passive. It's like an active trust. It's choosing to basically believe that the right things will come in their right time, even if you can't see them ripening yet. And just to keep in mind that the sweetness is coming, but not if we try to force it. And maybe you have felt that too. Maybe there's something in your life right now that you're craving, whether it's clarity, a certain opportunity, healing from something, love, whatever it is. If you've been reaching for it too soon, maybe the invitation here is to pause and let it ripen, to trust again that when the sweetness comes, it will be worth the wait. Another thing that's so interesting about poetry is that sometimes a piece has more than one meaning, even whenever you're the one writing it. Whenever I sat with picking fruit, I realized that there was another interpretation emerging that went a little deeper and honestly a little darker. The metaphor of fruit not ripening, I felt like could also reflect the way society and especially predatory men exploit youth, particularly young girls. They want what's unripe a lot of the time. They force themselves onto innocence that hasn't had the chance to fully mature. And in doing so, they create trauma and bitterness. And these are people that create scars that were never meant to be there so soon. So, this poem somehow became another way for me to confront that reality. That specific lines that I wrote in there, the lines of the bite will taste of bitterness from lack of mutuation, aren't just about patience. They also echo the destruction caused whenever someone takes what isn't ready to be taken. It's corruption of a natural timing and a violation of growth when that's done. And so I was thinking about how our culture often romanticizes youth and idolizes women who are much younger, smaller, untouched, and how dangerous that narrative is. And it just feeds into that predatory mindset. And yet, it's not just an individual problem, it's systematic. We see it in media, movies, music. This desire for unripened fruit is sold to us as beauty, when really it's exploitation. So while the poem does offer wisdom about patience in our personal lives, it's also carrying a warning about what happens when we, as a culture, don't respect natural timing and the innocence and growth of individuals. It's another call, I think, too, to protect that space and just to recognize that rushing or taking what's not ready can cause damage that lasts for longer than just the moment. So, this poem holds two truths at once. On one hand, it's about learning to wait for what is meant for us. And then on the other, it's about naming the harm that happens when people or even entire cultures refuse to wait. And I think that's the beauty of poetry. It just carries those different meanings depending on where you're standing in life and when you read it. Both are real and valid and can open our eyes in different ways, these interpretations. I hope that Picking Fruit, this poem, can remind you to be patient with yourself and let your story ripen before you rush. And if you connect with the second, I hope that maybe it's just a reminder that your innocence, your growth, your timing of life are all sacred, and anyone who tried to take that too soon doesn't get to define the fruit that you become. Moving on to the next piece called Fool's Paradise. When I wrote this one, I was picturing what happens whenever someone raises themselves to be so high and sit above everyone else. Whenever ego, pride, or power creates this distance between them and the people around them. I wanted to capture that illusion of making yourself seem untouchable and that inevitable crash that comes with whenever that illusion falls apart, unfortunately. So this is Fool's Paradise. Brace yourself for impact. It's a long way down from the pedestal you have built away from common ground. Who placed you above, as if the breath in your lungs amounts to more? Well, I won't implore holding my breath till death, since you look below in attempt to see eye to eye. As you fall from the sky, brace yourself for impact. You have created all this distance, sitting so high in your mind at a greater existence. Who placed you above, as if your time outvalues another's? You're too far gone, out of touch, hard to reach, like you're some superhuman a million miles away from reality. Did you forget you cannot defy gravity? Brace yourself for impact, because the castle in the air has collapsed at your feet, and no one will be there to save you as you smash into the concrete. I personally love this piece because of the imagery that I created with the height and the distance, and it just really creates that whole picture in your head of the pedestal, the castle in the air, and all of it's just supposed to circle around that idea that no matter how high we climb, we're still tethered to reality. Breath, time, mortality, those are the things that make us all equal. No amount of status or self-importance can really change that. So on the surface, This poem is basically a critique of arrogance. I went there. It's just about the people who think their time is worth more. I'm sure we've all met them at some point in our lives or know them. Just individuals who think that their existence somehow outvalues others, but underneath, it's also about the way society itself feeds into that. We're constantly putting people on pedestals ourselves, like celebrities, leaders, even people in our personal lives. We give them this godlike status, and then we act shocked whenever they fall. But of course, the higher the pedestal, the harder the landing, right? And I think that there's just this element of justice in this poem too. That phrase, brace yourself for impact, becomes like a warning and also a hard truth. Like, no one can live that far from reality forever, because sooner or later, the castle in the air, it crumbles and you're left with the consequences of your own illusions. And in that moment, there's really no one to save you but yourself. So this piece for me is both a mirror outward and inward. I think it outwardly, it challenges me, us, anyone who's reading it or listening to it to look at the people that we've elevated, the ones that we idolize or treat as if they're untouchable. And inward, I think it's basically asking us to check ourselves. Are there moments where we've let our own ego, our own pride distance us from others? Are we building these walls instead of bridges? I think ultimately this poem is supposed to just remind us that arrogance is not sustainable. And what really keeps us grounded, what keeps us human, is humility, connection, and ultimately, again, remembering that we're all standing on the same ground in the end. Next is greener. They say the grass is greener over there, jumping fences to compare, artificial landscapes filled with snakes and plastic personas barely awake. No use in wasting your breath, not being alive. I rather water the ground I stand on with the tears from my own eyes than to live a life of compromise. The grass is never greener, nor the sky any more blue, but your environment is merely a reflection of you. This one was born out of that old saying that we've all heard, the grass is greener on the other side. That little phrase that makes its way into our mind that sometimes plants doubt and makes us wonder if what someone else has might be better than what we've already got. And there's been times where I've caught myself living in that mindset, not so much these days. I'm rooted in gratitude and always so thankful, and that's honestly what anchors me. But I know that we've all experienced that at some point in our lives. So this topic is easily relatable. But living in that mindset of thinking that the grass is greener somewhere else than rather where you're standing, it's exhausting, because when you're constantly looking over the fence, you're not really present in your own yard. So I wanted to create that imagery and capture that illusion that we create when we start comparing, the danger of thinking that someone else's happiness, success, love, whatever it is, must somehow be superior to ours. What's really meant by me saying artificial landscapes filled with snakes and plastic personas, that line is just that things aren't always what they seem. From far away, another person's life might look effortless or more vibrant, but up close, what we find, it's not always what it seemed. Or maybe you realize what you're admiring isn't even real. It's been constructed like plastic. Perfectly curated images, facades, these masks that people wear to hide their real struggles. It's easy to forget that what we're seeing is often filtered and not the whole truth. Sometimes it's artificial, like the plastic personas that I'm mentioning here. And sometimes it's more dangerous, filled with those snakes we didn't expect. Either way, it's never what it appeared to be from the distance. One of the lines that resonates with me most is, "I'd rather water the ground I stand on with the tears from my own eyes than to live a life of compromise." I wrote that almost like a declaration to myself, and to anyone else who reads it, because growth isn't meant to come without struggle. I think most of us know that. All these tears, hardships, the mistakes that we make, those are the things that actually water our soil. They fertilize the ground, they nurture us, they shape us, teach us. And I realize that that is what I'd rather embrace, are those honest, messy moments of growth, that are worth living through, than constantly comparing and compromising who I am to chase after someone else's version of fulfillment. It's just always worth to tend to right where you are, even if it is the struggle, even if it does literally take those tears. It's worth investing in your own soil, your own journey, than waste energy not enriching your own life. Because the truth is, the grass will never be greener somewhere else if you neglect your own. And sometimes we don't want to admit it, that we've been neglecting ourselves. It's easier to point outward and say, if only I had what they had, or if only I were where they are. But that's the kind of mindset that steals our power. That victim mentality deprives us of the reality of the matter. It tells us that the happiness that we're seeking exists somewhere else, when in reality, it exists in how we're choosing to cultivate our present moment. What you water grows, and if you're pouring your all into comparison, there's nothing left to nurture your own life. The final lines of the poem are really the core message, I think, saying that the grass is never greener, nor the sky any more blue, that the environment is merely a reflection of you. When I wrote that, I was thinking about how much of our existence and, experience comes from within. It's not about what's out there, so it's more about what's in your inner world. If you're happy, or unhappy, insecure, unfulfilled, no new landscape will fix that. If your inner world is chaotic, then that's what you'll see around you, chaos. If your inner world is dry and neglected, everything will look barren. But if you shift your perspective, if you choose gratitude, if you choose to invest in yourself, so you can grow where you are, then suddenly the world you're standing in starts to look a lot more abundant. Nothing external is changed, but you did. And that is what's powerful, and that's where your power lies. The environment reflects the inner state of the person experiencing it. So, this poem basically became a rejection of comparison, and realizing life becomes fuller when we focus on our own growth. So it's an invitation to ground ourselves by noticing the beauty that already exists in our own lives, and recognize that we hold the power to shape that perspective. The grass isn't greener on the other side, it's greener where you choose to water it. The poem I want to share next is called Resurrection. This one came from a place of, I would say, pain and defiance, but also of renewal. It's about that feeling of being underestimated, dismissed, or maybe deliberately hurt by others, but still finding the strength not only to survive it, but to grow from it. I feel like the last poem kind of alluded to what this one is with its core message. But this is Resurrection. You tried to bury me, but darling, you reap what you sow. Give me all the elements, everything I need to grow. The seeds I have planted will come into fruition. This is the season of resurrection, and I am coming back to life, taking the rain, all of the pain, and pushing through the dirt, uncovering the spirit you wanted to kill. I shall rise from the graveyard you sought to build. And when you see all the flowers, you will be reminded of my power. When I was writing this one, I was thinking about those people that will try to bury us with their words, their actions, maybe just their doubt or the heaviness of their expectations, but they think they're breaking us down, and really what they're doing is just planting us deeper. And that's where the irony is. It's in those very elements that they use to cover us that are the same things that can actually fuel our growth. The dirt, the rain, even the pain, all of it becomes part of the process of becoming something new, something stronger. My favorite line is, "Give me all of the elements, everything I need to grow," because that is the part where the narrative flips. Instead of saying, "Look what they did to me," it says, "Look what I became because of it." That's the essence of resurrection, taking the worst of what tried to destroy you and using it as fuel to rise again. To me, it's a reminder that nothing and no one has the final say on your story. You do. And then there's that image of flowers blooming from the very grave someone else tried to dig. I think that is such a powerful metaphor because flowers are both delicate and strong. They literally grow in cracks in the sidewalks and they push through heavy soil. They reach for the light no matter what. And in this poem, they become a symbol of power, of beauty, and resilience. It's almost like saying, "You thought you buried me, but now, every time you see what I've become, you'll be reminded that you could not destroy me." And there is something both tender and victorious about that. And I love that. For me, resurrection is not just about revenge or proving someone wrong. It's more about reclaiming life. It's about refusing to stay small, refusing to stay buried, and choosing to bloom anyway. And I think that's something that we can all relate to because at some point in our lives, I think we've all felt like we were being pushed down or forgotten, covered over, whatever term you may want to use. But there's something there's just always that chance to rise again, to step into a new season and just have that realization that we are more powerful than the things that tried to bury us. So those poems will conclude the section of poetry that I have to analyze a little bit for you guys tonight, but I actually want to give you guys a little surprise before I wrap up this episode. So if you've stuck around this long, first off, thank you. You guys are the real ones. And second, you guys are going to get a little sneak peek into something I've been working on, which is my next book. I actually wrote this poem after either reading or hearing this random fact, but it totally blew my mind. It was like a little nerdy space fact that turned into a bigger reflection on life. And that is that the sunlight that we're seeing right now, it actually left the sun about 8 minutes ago. Like, what? So basically, every time we look up at the sky, we're seeing the past, not the present. And so, yeah, that got me thinking about how life is kind of the same. Truth, healing, clarity on things, they don't always show up in the moment. Sometimes they take their sweet little time to catch up to us. But when they finally reach us, and they do, they're just as beautiful as the sunlight that finally hits the earth. And I love that we're still showing up for life, even if we're running a little on delay. We're still, making coffee and planning futures and still living and loving, all in this borrowed light. And I thought that kind of made life feel softer somehow. Like, we don't always have to have everything figured out right away. The light and the answers, basically, they will get to us when they're supposed to. So here is your little sneak peek. This is light lag. The light we see is not the light that is, but the light that was. 8 minutes and 20 seconds ago, the sun spoke, and only now we hear its golden echo. What else reaches us late? Truth, understanding, clarity. Maybe we are always living in the aftermaths, bathing in the brilliance of something already gone. Still we rise, make coffee in the morning glow, plan futures in borrowed light, never quite touching the present as it is. And yes, how beautiful to stand in it anyway. To know the universe is slow to speak, but never silent. To feel warmth that began its journey before we even thought to look up. So yeah, that's your sneak peek into my new project. I'm so excited to share more with you guys when that time comes. But for now, we'll just call this one a little teaser. If you connected with it or with any of the poems I shared today, that's kind of the whole heartbeat of what I do, is just finding meaning in the small things and putting it into words. So you can check out my first book, The Journey We Take, or just hang with me more here on the podcast, where I'll continue sharing pieces of the next project book that I'm creating as it grows. It just really means the world that you guys listen and let these words live outside this wandering mind of mine and outside of my notebook. So with that, I think that's the perfect place to end today's episode. Thank you so much for listening, for letting me share these words and finding your own meaning in them. All right, friends, I'll catch you on the next one. If you'd like to stay updated and follow along, you can go on thejourneywetake.com. There you will find blog posts and some extra stuff and all the links to the social media platforms that you could also follow along with. And that's it, folks.